Okay, I will now assume the role of First Lady Pat Nixon, which is such an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Nixon, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today, especially on your birthday. We had a very special time with you last year, and we look forward to learning more about you today. You were born on March the 16th, 1912, but your father celebrated your birthday on March the 17th, and he called you his St. Patrick babe born in the morning. He called you babe for a few years, but your name was Thelma Catherine Ryan. Could you please share with us where you were born and your early years as babe?
Well, first of all, I'd really like to thank everybody for coming. It's just a joy and an honor and a privilege. I want to thank the people who put together this incredible video. This is just outstanding. And Cheryl, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mrs. Nixon. This is an honor.
No, this is an honor for me too. It really is. So going back in time, March 16th, 1912, it's a long time ago, if you can calculate it. How old would I be actually if I were still alive? So yes, I was born in Ely, Nevada. Does anybody know where Ely, Nevada is? You do? Oh my goodness, there's quite a few of you here. So I was born in Ely, Nevada, and my dad was a copper miner. So basically, I am a copper miner's daughter, and I was born very close to midnight, as you mentioned, Cheryl. And because, as you know, tomorrow is officially St. Patrick's Day, and my dad called me his St. Patrick's babe in the morning. He wanted so badly to name me Babe. My mom was pretty tough. Her name was Kate, and she said, I think that we should name her Thelma. So actually, Thelma won out. Thelma, my mother called me Thelma. My dad pretty much always called me Babe. And life was really pretty tough, although we didn't think it was that tough because we didn't have indoor water or electricity, the people around us didn't either. So, I joined my two brothers. As you've seen in the video, I have two older brothers. One is named Tom and one is named Will. They were born before me, so I actually joined them when I was born. And my dad he got really tired of working in a copper mine. Anybody here work at a copper mine? I never take it for granted that I'm talking to people who have not had my experience. Okay, so my dad was really tired of working in the copper mine, and my mom said, I think we should get out of here. We should go someplace. And so what they did was they actually drove from Ely, Nevada. They rented a car, borrowed a car, however they could get here. And they actually came to Cerritos, California, where my dad decided that he would try his hand at farming, which he did. And I think that I don't want to go on and on and on about your question about I was born at, yes, so born close to midnight.
You lost both of your parents by the time you were just 17 years old. What was life like for you and your brothers after that?
Well, going back to the farm, it was really great. I was 2 years old. My earliest recollection, anybody here from Cerritos? Okay, I see two people. Okay, so when we arrived in Cerritos, there was land for sale. It was 10 acres. And on this land, there was a house. And my mom said, this is it. There was no indoor electricity and indoor plumbing. How many of you grew up with a similar situation? You're not even that old, come on. You must have, maybe it was in a movie set or something. Really? Okay. So anyway, they decided that's where it was. And we worked very hard. We got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and my dad was a truck farmer. So basically he grew tomatoes, squash, peppers. He grew the biggest cabbages that you've ever seen. And people came from all around to see my dad, whose name was, my dad's name was Will, and he had the biggest cabbages, and they would go. He would actually harvest all of these farm products, farm vegetables, and then put them in the back of a truck, and it was called truck farming, and then he would go and he would sell them in town. And as I said, he worked extremely hard. I helped my mother, excuse me, I'm going to take a glass of water here for my, thank you. She actually worked very hard inside the house. So I helped her with the cleaning, the ironing, the cooking, and all the things that we do to help moms. And so my mom, when I was actually a freshman in high school, I was at Excelsior High School. Anybody here from Excelsior High School? I can't see over there. Looks like maybe somebody is. So I was 13 years old, and I was at Excelsior High School. And my mom was getting very, very weak. And we thought it was just because she was working very, very hard. But in some mornings, Cheryl, she could hardly get out of bed. And so we thought, Mom, what's going on? Yeah. And you know how moms are. She said, you know, I'm fine, I'll get better, I'll go to the doctor. So she did finally go to the doctor, and they discovered that she had Bright's disease. Bright's disease is anybody here have Bright's disease? I always ask questions. I don't assume that you know, that I'm telling you things that you don't have. So it was a kidney infection. She took some medicine. She went to the doctors. She actually stayed at the doctor's place for about 2 weeks, and we visited her every day coming home from school. But the medicine didn't work, and when I was 13 years old, she died. And it was a really big loss in the fact that my two brothers and I helped my dad. We helped him a lot, but it just wasn't the same. I think the hardest thing was, the most difficult event that I went to is when I was in school and all the other parents were there, and it was just a difficult time. But you know, we rallied and we made it work. We got very busy. We just had fun. We really did. We had cabbage. We threw cabbage patches at each other to see who could catch the biggest one. So we had a lot of fun. It wasn't just all hard work. We really did. I loved school. I really loved school. And even when I was ironing at night, I would prop my school books up on the chair and then read. And one of my brothers would come in, and we'd kind of like all be together. And it was not that bad. However, when I was a senior at Excelsior High School, my dad started coughing really, really badly. And we said, Dad, you need to get to the doctor. Oh, you know how dads are. I'll go to the doctor. Nothing's wrong with me, and I'll be fine tomorrow. But he wasn't fine tomorrow. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse until finally he could barely walk. And when he went to the doctor diagnosed him with tuberculosis. And the only remedy at that time was to take a lot of serums and potions and whatever, but they didn't work. And my dad died when I was 18 years old. Oh. I think the tough time there was, I was a senior in high school. There was a mother-daughter tea, and neither one of my parents could come, especially my mom. But you know, even that, we still rallied, and we decided we all three decided, my two brothers and I, we decided that we really wanted to go on to school, that education was very important to us. So even though we lost both parents, and it was really tough, we still, you know.
And that leads to my next question, because we understand that you attended USC, and you received, I believe, your degree in education. So what made you decide that education was going to be your vocation?
Well, I had, as the video showed, I had worked a lot of jobs. I had worked as a buyer in Bullock's department store. I had worked in so many jobs. And so when I was at SC, I'd actually gone to Fullerton Junior College. And then I have to say that when my dad died, I had been called Buddy, I had been called Babe, I had been called Thelma. So it was like, who am I really? I answered to all three of those names. But when my dad died, I changed my name to Pat, because I was his St. Pat's babe in the morning. So I was then known as Patricia Pat. And I think that I decided that maybe I didn't want to be a buyer or work in merchandising, because I'd have to work year-round. The pay was very, very little at the time. And so I loved my teachers. Did you like your teachers in school?
Oh, always. You know, I think they help form who I am today.
So I think anybody in this room, a teacher. Oh my goodness, we have many. You know, you really are the backbone. Yes, indeed. You really are the backbone of our country. Yes, thank you so much. So I loved my teachers. And also I realized that they had 3-month vacation. So when I started actually thinking about teaching, I thought, okay, I can teach for 9 months. The pay was not that bad. It was $1,500 a year. And we had 3 months off. And I could travel and I could do things that I really wanted to do. So that's why I decided to teach.
And then USC, your time at USC was?
My time at USC, I was very, very privileged and honored because the units that I had taken at Fullerton Junior College, I only went there for 1 year because I didn't have enough money to go on. So I drove a couple, it showed in the video. I'm so grateful for this video because you can actually relate and go back and forth on this. So I drove, there was an advertisement in the newspaper about somebody, please answer this ad about driving a couple across the country. And I thought, my golly, I've never been outside of California, except when I was in Nevada, and I was pretty young to remember all that. And so I actually drove this wonderful couple. They were originally from Connecticut. They came out to California to spend some time. And they were here, but then their, their niece in Connecticut was expecting a baby. So they needed to get back to Connecticut. And I answered the ad and went.
What an experience.
And so I spent, I was only going to spend a short time in New York, but one of my mother's, my mother had a cousin, and so she was a sister, and she was my aunt. She was a nun. I'm going to try to get this right. She was my aunt. She was a nun. She worked in a tuberculosis laboratory as a technician, and I thought, wow, I could learn a lot. So I stayed with the nuns. And I think some of them thought that I was in training to become a nun, but because I would try to be really, really good, but I'd still like to go out at night and go to a restaurant. And what kind of nun is this going to be? Here she is. So I worked there, and I stayed there for 2 years until I could save some money. Came back. I didn't go back to Fullerton Junior College. I was lucky enough to be admitted to USC with the credentials that I had from Fullerton. Yes. So.
Beautiful.
You ask good questions, Cheryl.
Mrs. Nixon, you and President Nixon met while auditioning for a community play in Whittier called The Dark Tower. And after the first time you went out with him, he said, "You may not know this, but someday I'm going to marry you."
Yeah,
what did you think about that?
The jaw dropped, as it still is today. So the backside of that is, when I was teaching at Whittier High School, we had a principal who was absolutely wonderful, and he gave us so many opportunities. My friend and I were in charge of the pep team, which was the support group for the football team, and then he came to me one day and he said, "Pat, I've seen that you were active in high school in theater, and we have a community theater here. How many of you have done community theater?" Oh, wow. You've been to Ely, Nevada. You grew up with no water, no electricity. You're teachers. Oh, my goodness, we have an outstanding group here. So he said, I saw what you had done in community theater, and they're auditioning for this play. Why don't you go and audition? And I thought, sure, why not? It sounds like fun. And he really encouraged us to get very involved in our community, in doing volunteer work. And so I did, and then so I arrived at the studio, or at the theater, this little theater, and there was a very nice-looking man, and he came over, and he introduced himself, and he said, "Hello, I'm Richard Milhouse Nixon." And I said, "And I'm Patricia Bryan," and he got the part. And I found out that just talking to him that evening, that he was actually a deputy clerk with a law firm in Whittier. So we finished the audition. We were told that we got the part in the play, and we're walking out the door, as if you would walk out the door right now. And he opened the door for me, and he stood there, and his mouth opened, he said, "You may not know this, but someday I'm going to marry you."
Goodness.
And okay, has that ever happened to anybody in this room? All right, well, I can score one. And I looked at him, Cheryl, and I thought, you must be insane, because I don't even know you. And I was living in an apartment with 2 other roommates, and I went home and I told my roommates, "You won't believe this, but this man I barely know." Did that happen to you, Cheryl?
No, that has not happened to me, no.
And so, but we spent quite a bit of time together in the evenings, rehearsing, and then, as you know from being in theater, you spend a lot. The play is the thing, right? So especially after school. And we went for coffee, and I would sit and I would listen to him talking about wanting to make a difference in his city, in his community, in his country, and about going to faraway places. And little by little by little, guess what? I found myself liking him, not falling in love with him, but liking him, because I was still dating somebody else. And you know what he did? He drove me to my date. And then he waited for me to come back, and he drove me home. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And I was
He was on a mission. He knew what he wanted. Yeah.
Yes, and he wrote the most beautiful letters. I have to, as an aside, I think some of them are here in the library. I mean, it's my dear vagabond, because I didn't want to get married. I wanted to do other things, and I was almost 28 years old, and I said, I'm not ready to settle down. So he would write, my dear gypsy, my dear vagabond. He would write me every day, and we only lived 2 miles from each other. He was really determined.
So you were 28 when you were married, and you and President Nixon, you were married on June 21st, 1940, at the Mission Inn in Riverside.
Have you ever been there?
It's lovely. It's just, sometimes I think people forget that it's there, but it's absolutely a beautiful historic site.
It is really pretty. Anybody been to the Mission Inn? Oh my God, oh, look at this whole room almost.
Oh,
Anybody
it's
married there? Wow, but you've been there. I think so. I see somebody said, okay. Yes.
And so what was your wedding day like? And did you have a huge formality like the weddings of today?
A big blowout wedding? Mm-hmm. We did not. You know that Tricia, our daughter, our lovely daughter Tricia, was actually married in the White House. She was married in July, and you can still see the gazebo is here actually in the garden here. Mm-hmm. We did not have a big blowout wedding because I was teaching school, and also my husband was practicing law, and we decided that we'd have a small wedding, and then we wouldn't then all the people from all the families and everybody would they wouldn't have to come. They wouldn't be, we wouldn't impose upon them to come. What we did decide to do, we decided to splurge and take a 2-week honeymoon, so we did that. But going back to the wedding day, it was really beautiful. I wore a blue lace suit, and my husband gave me the first corsage that I've ever had in my whole life. It was really beautiful. So we were married there, and then we set off. Our friends had a great sense of humor, I have to tell you. Back in the day, we actually got, we loved to hike and we loved to camp, and they knew this about us. And so what they did was, they actually prepared a large assortment of canned goods. And we thought, wow, baked beans, grapefruit, peaches, whatever, SpaghettiOs, whatever you put in these cans. They put them in the back of our trunk of our car.
Oh, no.
Well, what happened was they had such a great sense of humor. What they did was they were able to get in the back trunk of the car. They took off all the labels of all the cans of all the food. So here we are. We wanted to go to Mexico, so we're driving across the border to the Pan American Highway to go all the way down, almost to the border of Central America. Anybody driven that highway? I'm sure you have, because you've done everything else. So what they did was they took off all the labels of all the cans. So in the morning, we were eating spaghetti. And for dinner, we were eating canned grapefruit slices. But it didn't matter because we had a great time. And we did splurge in Mexico City, and we stayed at the Reforma Hotel. Anybody stayed there? I don't even know if it's still there or not. But we had a wonderful time. We really did. Oh. So we did not splurge on the big wedding.
Okay.
But you've been to the Mission Inn, so you know how beautiful it is.
Oh, especially at Christmas
all of you know.
time.
It's just so pretty. So even if you don't have a huge wedding, it's just a very special wedding. Awesome place, yes.
So, what did you like most about being First Lady?
You ask really good questions. When you're First Lady, you know it's not an elected position. So I could actually choose projects that I wanted to do. And at first, I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. You know that Lady Bird Johnson had done garden beautification. I loved that. And Jacqueline Kennedy was able to secure a lot of the things that had left the White House, the tapestries, the rugs, the paintings, even some of the lamps. She worked with a wonderful man to get those things back to the White House. And I thought, you know, I did a lot of volunteering during my life, and people were my project. I love meeting new people. And so I thought perhaps volunteerism. And also, the thing I liked about being First Lady is I had a staff of 10 people. That included the wonderful person who helped me with my scheduling. It was a very busy, busy life. I received about 300 letters a week. And I loved reading the letters because I could keep my finger on the pulse of actually what the women, and the men too, were thinking about our country and asking me questions. Everything from, did I do my own hair? What's my dog's name? Did I buy my own clothes? To some really wonderful questions. How can I get involved in public service? How do you balance being a mother and a wife and doing the things that you're doing? What can I do? How can I serve? How can I get involved in making this country a better place? And those were I loved receiving these letters. The fact too is I was able, as you've seen, I was able to travel all over the world. I visited 81 countries and I visited thousands of people. I would have never had that opportunity as just not being First Lady. Also welcoming people to the White House. That was great fun.
Oh.
It really was.
Is there a certain event that took place at the White House that was a favorite memory aside from Tricia's wedding?
Aside from Tricia's wedding, I think probably, as you know, my husband ended the war in Vietnam. And when the prisoners of war came home, there were 591 prisoners of war who came home. Would all the people who served in the military please stand up right now in this room? I want to stand up too. I want to stand up too. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much for your service. Well, he ended the war in Vietnam, and the prisoners of war came home, and some of the prisoners who came home from the war had been really severely tortured, and they were living in cells, and they didn't know the person next to them in the cell. So as you may know, they developed a system of knocking on the walls at a code to find out about their wives, their sweethearts, their life back home. And when they came home, we really wanted to do something at the White House. So I said to my husband, what can we do? And he said, why don't we invite them all to the White House with their wives, their significant others? And so in 1973, we invited the POWs to the White House for a rockin' evening. It was really great. They came home, and we had corsages for all of their wives and loved ones. We even had the commander of the military come. He had fashioned a flag out of some pieces of sheet and a tiny Red Cross colored flag, and he was waving it when he came in. Wow. Oh my gosh, there wasn't a dry eye in the room.
And it was a tent outside.
And there were, yes, exactly, Cheryl. There were tents outside because we couldn't fit them all in this East Room. And this is a replica, as you know, of the East Room of the White House. And we couldn't fit them all in, so we actually tented the whole yard. It was great.
Amazing, unforgettable.
Sammy Davis Jr. was in charge of all the entertainment. You could imagine what that was like.
Oh, wow.
He brought in everybody he knew, the whole rat, the
Rat Pack.
Rat Pack. Thank you. The Rat Pack was there.
Oh,
it was really
my.
great. And then Irving Berlin was there conducting the orchestra that sang God Bless America.
Oh.
My husband and I went to bed about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we looked out at our window because they were still going at 4 a.m. I just think they went into the next day too. So probably that was the most unforgettable. There was one other event that was really great. As I said, when the event became bigger than the room that could accommodate them, we actually went out on the road. And so one of the events was when the astronauts came back from the moon. Anybody been to the moon in this room? But you know the astronauts. Anybody know the astronauts, the three? Okay. I heard it. Armstrong? Good. Aldrin and Collins. You guys are good. Give yourselves a hand. Oftentimes they can't get that. Yes, so Aldrin, Armstrong, and Collins, they came back from the moon. And we welcomed them. We actually had, it was too big. We had governors, people from all over the world coming. And so we went to the Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles where we had a really great evening. That was very, very special too. So those are probably two, and then Trisha's wedding, as you said, yes. As an aside, my other lovely daughter, Julie, chose not to have a White House wedding, and she was married in Norman Vincent Peale's church in New York City. And I just wanted to tell you that.
Yes. Oh,
how many of you have been married in Norman Vincent Peale's church in New York City?
Mrs. Nixon, you were the first president's wife to tour the People's Republic of China in 1972. That had to be an amazing memory for you. Can you share some of that with us?
How many of you have been to China in this room? Oh, look at this. See, I knew. Okay, so in 1972, actually in 1970, my husband was realizing that there are 800 million people in China and a lot of people in Russia. And China and Russia were speaking a lot to each other. Even though there were conflicts on the border, they were really kind of getting involved, and that's a lot of people. So, and no foreigners had been, no Westerners had been into China for 25 years. So in 1970, my husband sent Henry Kissinger to China to actually kind of welcome the way or maybe talk about a visit. And we got the green light in February of 1972 to go, and you can see there. And I wore a red coat, which, as you know, it symbolizes good luck and happiness. So we got the green light to go, and it was really, if you can see that picture, it was really like landing on the moon. Truly it was. It is so vast. Those of you who've been to China, you know how enormous, it's ginormous it is. And we went actually to 3 cities. We went to Peking, Hangzhou, and Shanghai. And the purpose of the trip really was to establish relations with China because we wanted them to not dominate that part of the world. That's a big part of the world, and that Russia, and if Russia and China got together, that would be a lot of domination and a lot of power in that part of the world. So that's why we went. It was the week that changed the world, and actually my husband and Chow En-lai signed the communique in Shanghai. Taking a look at this picture just for a moment, Cheryl, I'm sorry to interrupt you and your wonderful questions, but on this picture, you can't see it, but I had been to the Peking Zoo that day, and you can see Chow En-lai is talking to me, and he's laughing.
Yeah.
That was the first time we actually heard him laughing, laughing out loud, and he had a translator who spoke perfect English. We don't know where she'd been to school to learn perfect English, but she'd been someplace because her English was so good. You can see her over there at the far left. She has a bob haircut. So he's laughing because I went to the zoo and I told him about the pandas.
Oh, that's what it was.
And so there's a package of cigarettes that you can't see. But as the story goes, there was a pack of cigarettes on the table. And on the pack of cigarettes, there is a picture of pandas. So he said, I said, well, I would really like some pandas. So he picked up the cigarettes and he offered me, and I looked at them and I thought, oh my goodness, and that's why we all started laughing. You can see everybody's laughing, laughing. It was wonderful, wonderful event. And I said, no, I said, with all due respect, I'd like to have some real live pandas. And he said, I will get them to you. And I thought, okay, but how is he going to? Don't worry, I get them to you. Through the translator, I get them to you. And as you see, they arrived. Yes. So then we said to him, so what can we do for you? What can we give you? You won't believe this. He said, we'd like to have 2 oxen. Have you ever seen an oxen? Do any of you have oxen? He had 2 oxen, and oxen are really shaggy. They look like they need a bath and a haircut. You can see the picture. This is what he wanted. Okay, go figure. We sent them to him. He sent us the pandas.
Oh my God!
But it really was. It really was.
Oh, that's fun.
So I visited acupuncture. Maybe you've seen acupuncture. I'm seeing some heads nod. Good for you. It's just, whew, it's incredible. No pain and needles, and you stay awake, and no anesthetic, and you're good to go. And it was great. So I visited acupuncture. I visited a kitchen where they were able to take a turnip and turn it into a chrysanthemum. My love for school, I visited the children in the schools. I visited the I visited the zoo, and it was a wonderful, wonderful trip. They made me feel so warm and welcoming. It was a great trip. Have you been to China?
No, I have not.
Not yet.
No, I have not.
Okay.
All first ladies usually take on a cause close to their heart. And what has that been for you?
Well, as you've seen from the clip, we actually installed the ramps. They had never been installed ramps in the White House. How many of you here have been to the White House? Okay, a lot of you have. So you've seen the ramps at the White House, and you've seen we did tours for the blind.
Yes.
We invited the girls. I saw some Girl Scouts here. Did I see some Girl Scouts here earlier? Girl Scouts. We had an Easter egg roll. We had Sunday worship services right here in this East Room with Billy Graham, who just passed away. Excuse me.
And the lighting of the White House.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, Cheryl. Yes, the lighthouse had never been lighted, or lighted. Who's an English teacher here? Had never been lighted. And so the money that we received for the inauguration, all that money, I was told that I could use for projects. And I thought to myself, gosh, you know, every other monument is lighted in Washington. Why not the White House? So I worked with an architect, and we sat down, and my husband didn't know this. Oh. I didn't tell him. So how many of you don't tell your husband things? And so we were at Camp David, and Camp David is a wonderful retreat that we go to on the weekends where I can actually hang out. We can order a pizza, watch Netflix, whatever, and just really completely relax. And so we were coming back from Camp David, and so I told the helicopter pilot, he knew about this. And so he said, Pat, let me know when you want me to actually, excuse me, I'm talking too much. When you want me to signal the White House. Because at the signal from the helicopter pilot to the White House, they would flip the switch and the White House would be lighted.
Oh, how lovely.
I'd never seen it lighted either, because obviously I couldn't do that and still have that as a secret for my husband. And so when they lighted it, it was incredible. And so the helicopter pilot turned around to me and to my husband, and he said, do you want me to go around again? So circle the White House again to see it. And they said yes. And so we circled the White House 3 times just to see how beautiful it was.
That's so special.
It was really special.
I can't imagine it not being lit.
I know, exactly, Cheryl.
That was such a beautiful accomplishment.
It was, well, it was, as I said, it was wonderful people who had come to the inauguration, and I was told I could use that money, so that was great.
Beautiful. How did you develop so much self-confidence, taking into consideration that you were an orphan at the age of 17?
Wow, that is such a great question. How many of you in this room are orphans? Have been an orphan? I saw one hand go up. Yes, one hand. I think we worked hard in the farm. We really, really worked hard, and so that gave me a hard work ethic. And then I knew that I wanted to go to school, so I worked my way through school.
And you love books?
I love books. Do you like to read?
Oh, I do. I think it's escapism, I think, sometimes from reality.
What do you like to read?
Well, for me, fiction.
Okay. Do you have a favorite author?
I do love Woman of Substance. I'm sure all the ladies, many ladies have read that book, but it's really a form of escapism but a learning tool too. So
Exactly. I couldn't have answered it any better than you, Cheryl, because I think I love Taylor Caldwell, Ernest Hemingway, Pearl Buck, and I love a really, really good mystery like a whodunit, like an Earl Stanley Gardner, P.D. James. So those are good. And then my daughter, Julie, wrote this book that's on sale here. Can we plug it right now?
Yes.
She wrote this book. This is absolutely a phenomenal, phenomenal book. It's so well done. And Julie Nixon Eisenhower wrote this book. And if you really want a great book to read, it's on sale right outside the door. So yes, books were, because I think in books it was an escape, but it also was a learning tool. I couldn't have said it any better than you, Cheryl.
Absolutely.
And driving across the country, that was that was a biggie.
That was a challenge.
That was a real challenge because I didn't know what to expect, and I was in charge of driving, and if anything happened, but we had such a good time and we enjoyed so much. So those are the things I think that gave me, I can do it.
I'd like to close with just one more question. When did you feel the most proud to be First Lady of the United States?
Oh, wow. Well, you've seen, I don't want to recap all the things that we did. Everything from, I think I don't know whether we're shown here, but my husband actually started the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. He started the American Cancer Society. He was, first women elected to office were under my husband's presidency. I think really on reflecting that, I think it was the greatest honor to be married to my husband. We were married for 53 years. And those wedding vows, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, in richer and poor, until death us do part. Because we had almighty challenges. You've seen them. And we were able to get through them because we were a team. We were a team. We didn't always agree to be to eye and eye. He loved to let the dogs out and go swimming in the White House fountain. I said, Dick, we cannot let those dogs out. They would sleep on the sofa. I said, no, they can't sleep on the sofa. But I think really, in all seriousness, being married to a wonderful man who cared so much about his country, he cared so much about the people, he cared so much about peace, and he cared so much about all of us, I would say for me, that was the greatest honor. It wouldn't get any better than that. So being married to this wonderful man until death us do part was probably my greatest honor.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Mrs. Nixon, and I hope you don't mind taking a few questions from the audience, and we wish you a happy, happy birthday.
Thank you so much. I also want to thank Cheryl so much. Where is she? The lovely lady who introduced it. Cheryl's been working, you wouldn't know this about Cheryl because she's just so unflappable, but Cheryl has been working at the Nixon Library for 25 years. I think we really need to give you a hand.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Nixon. Thank you.
And it ain't easy. She gets documents out on time, and look at the smile. I think she smiles in her sleep. Who wouldn't be married to this wonderful man, Sam, either? I would love to answer any questions you may have. Before I answer the questions, you're such a well-rounded group. You know where Ely is, you grew up on a farm, no electricity, been theater. I mean, golly, you've been to China, been to the White House. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes? What did your brothers go on to do? Oh, thank you for asking. Yes. My two brothers, one went into lighting at the movie studios, and the other one went on to USC. Any Trojans in this room? I forgot to ask. All right. He played football, and then he went into business. Thank you for asking. And a little known fact, too. My mother was married before I was born, and her husband was killed in a flash flood. And with that first marriage, she had 2 sons and a daughter. So basically, she had a son and a daughter. And then she married my dad, and she had the 2 boys and me. So basically, there were 5 of us, 2 girls and 3 boys. And my siblings by my mother's first marriage actually didn't live with us because we were so poor. And so the grandparents on one side said, how about we take them in and we care for them? And so they did. And that's why we actually didn't all grow up together. But we were very close anyway.
I have a question. Pat Nixon was to your right, Maureen, in the back of the room.
Thank you.
Pat Nixon was such
Deer in the headlights.
such a sweet, sweet woman. What was her favorite dessert?
Her favorite what?
Dessert.
Oh,
Dessert, her favorite dessert. I can tell you what her favorite sweets were, because in the White House, back on the East Coast, you don't get See's candies. Those are my absolute favorites. In fact, our daughters, Trisha and Julie, back in the day, we didn't know what was in them.
right.
So guess what they would do? They would take a pin and they would scrape out the bottom of the candy, the See's candies, and then they would find out what was in it. And President Nixon would walk into the room, and his disciplining was quite slight. He would say, "Honey, I just wouldn't do that," or please don't squish the chocolates. So favorite dessert. I think her favorite dessert probably is a chocolate cake. Anything chocolate. Can I go now? Where's the chocolate?
Okay, right here in the second row.
Yeah.
Mrs. Nixon, you've lived in many places. I'd like to know what was your favorite place of residence?
My favorite place of residence probably was, I have to tell you, the first apartment we lived in. The first apartment we lived in. Does anybody know if I say mohair furniture? Does that bring up a vision? We were so happy. I was teaching school. My husband was practicing law. We were so happy. And it was lean times too. But gosh, we went to musicals. We walked on the beach because we lived right in this area, Whittier. And so we walked on the beach. Can you beat Southern California weather? I mean, it's just idyllic. And we didn't have a lot of cares. We didn't have a lot of anything, but just really enjoying each other. Thank you for that question. I've never been asked that question. Thank you.
You're right up front.
Hi.
Hi.
Fight on, by the way, fight on.
Fight on,
USC, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to ask you, as an actor myself, part-time actor, I noticed in the video that you did some extra work on movies, and I wondered, could you tell a little bit about that?
Yes, they were actually doing some filming in our area, and we thought it'd be really kind of fun just to do something. We were always interested in doing volunteer work or whatever, and this came up. They needed extras, and we thought, whoa, because we'd never done this. And so are you a working actor? You're part?
No, I just do community theater.
But community theater is the tops. We love community theater. How many of you, I mean, you can do that. You go and you audition, and it's just awesome. Do you enjoy it?
I love it. I'm doing one right now.
Are you? Where are you? Oh, gosh, where are you?
Yeah, I'm doing it, Annie. I'm going to do Daddy Warbucks, and yes, I am going to shave my head. So.
But where is it? Where is it?
Attic Theater, ATTIC.
Do you all know the Attic Theater?
Fairview and Segerstrom and Santa Ana.
Do you all know where this is? You can plug this. Community theater is great. You're going to be Daddy Warbucks. Come on, stand up, stand up. Yeah, stand up. Tell them.
My name is Tom Short. Yes, I'll be doing Annie at the Attic Theater in Santa Ana. And the dates are April 19th through May 13th. And it's ocact.com. So, hope you come.
Yeah. And it's really fun. And Cheryl was asking me, we both were talking about books. It's such an escape. And theater is such a wonderful escape, too. Mm-hmm. So I was asked, actually, you saw that clip about we were doing extra work for the movie. And then I was asked, I think they were desperate for actors and actresses then. So they asked me if I wanted to go on and actually have a major part. But I thought, probably not. I love teaching school so much. And I'd have to probably leave teaching, and who knows where that would have gone. Who knows what would have happened.
We'll take one more, second row to your left.
Well, first of all, thank you, ladies. This has been very informative and very interesting. I'm curious what your biggest challenge was as First Lady.
Wow, these are excellent questions that I have not been asked. I think the biggest challenge was to be able to, my calendar, as you can read, when you read in this book, the calendar, the daily schedule that I had was really incredible. It was nonstop. So the biggest challenge probably was to be able to pace myself so that I didn't burn out or get exhausted. And one of the ways that my husband and I did that was we loved watching movies. And so in the evening, we'd watch a movie. And also, we really believed in exercise. And so we would walk every single day, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, even at the White House, we'd walk around the White House yards. And then when I was back here in San Clemente, we took a walk every single day. And I think exercise, it really kind of releases these endorphins, and it just kind of gives you a spectrum of not just having to go to the next, go to the next, go to the next, go to the next. You take breaks, and that was it. So the biggest challenge probably was to be as good as I could possibly be with what I was doing. Thank you for that question. I'm still trying to find that. There was a question back in the room. I saw you with your hand up right back there. Maybe one last question. Yes.
Thank you. Have you had any rivalries in your lifetime?
Have I had any what? What was that word?
Yeah.
Have you had any rivalries in your lifetime?
Oh, gosh, what a great question. If I did, I didn't know about it. The press was always wonderful. My husband wrote the books are all on sale here. He was so kind. He actually dedicated the book to Pat, who also ran. It was very sweet. Good questions. Thank you for your questions. Yes. So I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for coming. It's really a pleasure and honor. Well, thank you so much. You did a great job. You did a great job.